As I've been saying, folks, now is not the time to just lose all hope. I mean, it's time to get strategic right here, and we have to, as a community, plan what's on the horizon. What happens in the midterms? How are we a check on some of the overreach or excessive overreach we're about to see with Donald Trump, especially if they do what they say they're going to do? When it comes to government, I believe you got to listen to what people are saying and take it very, very seriously. So, you know that we've been now on the front lines here of talking about what we can do and how to think about things. I want to bring in Lakshya Jain, who's one of the people who run Split Ticket. Lakshya helped our election night coverage just give you the raw data, and we're always just going to give you the data. It's whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly. But Lakshya, there's some reason though why, and you and I were talking, off camera about this, and I thought it was important to share with the community though. If you're thinking strategic here and you're the Democrats, based on what we're seeing in the exit polls and the headwinds against the Democrats going into this thing, there are some reasons why you would say, you know what? It could have been much, much worse. There's historical examples of that, and there's a chance to build something robust to come. Obviously, if you're a Democrat and you're in the pro-democracy community, that's not to acknowledge the fact that these results were still pretty bad. But from a strategic standpoint, you could look at this data and say, you know what, let's be strategic about it. How do you analyze this data if there was some positivity here?
Well, let me just say that I think this was probably, as everyone knows, a very disappointing night for the Democratic Party overall. But even so, I think that if you're looking at the longer term perspective, especially for the House, it is a significantly better picture than you might have assumed if you were given these results to start with. Because think about it, New Jersey, Biden plus 16 state. If you knew that New Jersey was within 6 points, you would have assumed that the party was getting clattered like in 2010 or 2014, which is the last time New Jersey was anywhere near close in actuality. So the fact that the Democratic Party is on track to take between 212 and 216 House seats is actually really, really good for them, because what that means is in 2026, they're going to have a much easier time taking back the House of Representatives than they would have otherwise. And that's important because if you remember 2016 was when, they were at 190-ish seats and they had to go through hell and back to get to a majority. They had to break a whole ton of gerrymanders. They had to not just reshape the coalition, but also find a new message, deliver on that, and pray to God that they could get the recruits. This time around, they don't have to make up 27, 28 seats. They need to make up 5, 6, 7 seats when the midterms come around. And that's the type of swing that, the Republican Party had a terrible 2022. And even they managed to get 9 seats because fundamentally, the president's party almost always struggles in a midterm, barring a 9/11 event. So with Donald Trump now in office again, a Trump midterm gives Democrats a really good chance to get the House back pretty easily, especially looking at these results, because they held up a lot better than you would expect. There are a lot of Trump district Democrats who just outraised their challengers so much that they were in a very robust spot, and you would bank on them holding ground in 2026. So broadly speaking, Ben, I think that really they've got a great shot at taking back the House in 26.
And Lakshya, to your point, though, yes, they were very well funded, some of these Democrats in those Trump districts, but also seemingly they knew how to talk to their district in a way. They say kind of all politics is local, although, at a national level, we can extrapolate these various trends. And I think one of the things that you've analyzed are, some of the trends that when you see the results, were a bit surprising about the electorate, where they were in 2020 versus demographically where they were in 2024, because to the kind of statement that you made, if you were to have told me, here are the amount of votes out there, Donald Trump's going to get this amount of votes, and I were to use 2020 as a reference, I would have told you, well, if you're telling me Trump's going to get that amount of votes, I think that I probably would have even been more bullish, but that's not the case because of these demographic trends. How would you describe those trends and the lessons that could be learned? And do you think that my assessment of there, if I just knew the total, that, or would that be something that would, you really couldn't?
It's interesting. I actually think if I knew the total number of votes Trump would get from 2020, it wouldn't have actually told me all that much because you don't really know the turnout environment. But if you had told me the trends from 2020 in some of these states, I would have been panicked for the Democratic Party. I really thought that, in a world in which they're losing 10 points of ground in New York, there would have been no chance that they were picking up D'Esposito's seat, Molinaro's seat, and Brandon Williams' seat, right? Like those are Kathy Hochul level numbers bad almost. And the fact that, even despite getting a presidential top line that mirrors their 2022 generic vote in New York, they are still on track to flip 3 districts in New York. So there is a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Democratic Party moving forward in a way that I actually would not have said in 2016 that I would say now. Now, people say, like, look at all the Hispanic votes they've lost. Look at all the votes they've lost in these safe states. Look at New Jersey entering the field as a semi-competitive state. I would say to that, in actuality, what it shows me is that, no party can or should ever take its voters for granted. And to the extent that we saw the Latino community really push back against the Democratic Party, it's because they really did not agree with the Democratic Party's approach on economics. But it shows that even voters who you would have thought were loyal to your party and in that camp for God knows how long can move. Why should the same thing not be said about the Republicans? Now, people can say, and I've heard a lot of Democrats say this, Republicans are a cult. Republicans don't move. Republicans don't care. And that's not true. Dan Osborne outperformed by 12 points against Deb Fischer as an independent. Democrats can run and have run independents and come close to picking up seats. John Tester, Sherrod Brown, massively overperformed. Again, some of that's incumbency, but some of that is just genuinely because they knew how to talk to their regions. And if the Democrats want to make back those grounds with Hispanic voters from 2020, from 2016, the key thing in these results that I see is that the swings were titanic in Hispanic districts, in Latino districts overall, and just everywhere. Democrats lost ground because they just seemed out of touch. And if they can figure out how to talk to them, there's no reason that with a probably unpopular Donald Trump in office, there's no reason they can't make a lot of those gains back.
Final kind of, prescriptive advice. You've studied the numbers, you've analyzed the numbers, we've seen those shifts. If you were to, if you were to be hired by a candidate right now, just say a generic candidate, setting aside any specific political party, and they're saying, look, Lakshya, you're close to all of this data, you've studied the electorate and the swings. What would be kind of your elevator pitch to them about what they have to do generally if they're running at a national level?
I think, honestly, I would say there's a 30-second way to answer this and a long way to answer this. And I'll give you the 30-second way. Just be normal and talk to people as if they're normal, right? Like, people want to know how can they build a better life for themselves. And that generally drives a lot of the backlash, a lot of the swings that we see election to election. And a lot of this comes with the party just needing to be accessible and needing to just talk to people. They need to get their message out there in mediums that the party may have eschewed. Because look, when Kamala Harris campaigned, she gained ground compared to where she didn't campaign. In Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, these swing states, they did a lot better than everywhere else. And it shows that the Democratic message is actually not a toxic message. It is a winning message for voters. They like the Democratic movements and the Democratic platforms. But when the underlying reality is so bad, it creates headwinds. And in this case, that reality was because of global economic conditions. But what it tells us, these campaigns tell us, is that if we can talk to people, if Democrats can just talk to people and get their message out there front and center in every media platform, go on podcasts, go on TV shows, go on every way you can to just appear normal, you would get a lot of votes. Because when Trump is in office, a lot of weird stuff tends to happen with the Republican Party. And there is no better time to frame yourself as the normal guys than right now.
Finally, just if you can give us a quick recap of where we are with the House right now.
Yeah, I would say right now the Democratic Party is probably on track to get between 212 and 216 House votes. I would say my guess is they're going to end up at 215, and I think they're going to take Garcia's seat in California's 27th and John Duarte's seat in the 13th. I think they're going to fall short in Michelle Steele's seat in California's 45th. I think they're going to fall short in Siscomani's seat in the 6th of Arizona, and I think they're going to fall short against Kellen Calvert in the 41st. Ben, before I go, can I just say that, if you had told me that the Democrats were knocking off Mark Molinaro, Anthony D'Esposito, Brandon Williams, potentially Mike Garcia, and John Duarte. Mike Garcia, the guy who has given Democrats so much heartache over so many years. If you told me that those guys were all going down in a red wave year, I would not have believed you. So the fact that this is a live ball here really shows there's a lot for Democrats to actually take solace in, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. And hey, a 222 to 213 majority for the Republicans is barely functional. So there's going to be a lot of chaos and a lot of opportunity for Democrats to put themselves forward once again as the normal alternative.
Well, we will be covering all of that, and we'll hope to have you back soon. Lakshya Jain, thanks for joining us, and everybody, please hit subscribe of our continuing coverage post-election. Thanks for watching.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram at MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.